Thanks for joining me for a chat today, Tom. So we do a lot of work with hospitality. What do you think from what do you think that we bring to hospitality venues that other managed service providers may not?
Yeah, I suppose, the first thing, Nathan, that is so critical to our success in the hospitality sector, and when I talk hospitality sector, I'm talking organisations with multiple venues. And we've been operating in this space for over 20 years and got a very deep experience in that sector for what is important to them. Obviously, knowing, what needs to work and what are the operational metrics that need to occur on a day-to-day basis. What are the things that are changing in the sector? So we deal with everything from smaller operators with, for example, 3 venues right through to operators with tens and tens of venues right across the eastern seaboard of Australia. And that depth of experience across 20 years has changed our business model. For example, we operate 7 days a week to provide services to those groups because they operate 7 days a week. So that's one critical, very obvious thing that we do differently that ensures we can service this sector in an immediate way. Because, take for example, if we've got a venue that has network issues, payment issues, Wi-Fi, whatever it might be related to IT at 8 p.m. on a Saturday night or 2 p.m. on a Sunday afternoon when their venues are at their busiest, groups and the venues can't be waiting till Monday morning to get an answer on something. That's in terms of immediacy of response. We're also doing, 24/7 monitoring of all the core networks of all this. So all these things that are imperative to ensure venues are operating at their peak at the times when they're at their peak. So we do a lot of that. And then, of course, all the back end work that we've come to know over the years with hospitality that's so important, guest Wi-Fi, making sure that all the vendors across the space that service a hospitality group and venue are harmoniously talking to each other. So there's so many of them, just like any business, but particularly in hospitality. You've got everything from TAB networks, music, guest Wi-Fi networks, POS systems, payment systems, gaming systems, security. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. A lot of them have got function spaces now, so there's video conferencing requirements and the list goes on. So whilst we service a lot of the core components of all of those vendors, often there's so much interlinkage between those vendors and issues. So we're often sourced as a single point of contact because we know everyone in the industry and all the major players and suppliers. And if there is an issue, people will tend to call us first. We may, in most cases, through our monitoring and what have you, we can find out exactly what is going wrong. And if it's something that we don't have direct access to, we can pinpoint 9 times out of 10 what the issue is and then liaise with those vendors, whether it be on a 2 p.m. on a Sunday afternoon to get the entire operation back operational. So it's that sort of deep entrenchment in the industry that has made us sort of the lead player in IT for hospitality groups.
Yeah, that's great. What are some of the things that you've seen over the years where hospitality companies are really starting to leverage technology and get some operational efficiencies or big wins for their organizations?
Yeah, so I mean, we can go right through the whole. There's a lot, but there's a few big things that we've seen change. And I'll go to recent times, for example, centralization of reservations for multi-site venues. So we still see a lot of groups that come to us that have disparate telephony systems in all their venues. None of them are talking to each other. We centralize all that in terms of having the ability to take it all cloud-based, and then we can point and route calls to a centralised reservations team during the middle of the day, and then that team may finish at sort of 6 o'clock and calls are then routed back to the venue when it's appropriate for last minute changes and what have you. We then are now started to overlay a lot of AI into that process. So you don't have people sitting there answering the phone or answering basic questions. Sentiment analysis with AI to make sure that, if someone is calling a venue or a group for an events inquiry, that is being handled appropriately and they are getting the right questions and that customer service side. So that's a really interesting example of how we've sort of, through that process, and often more often than not, is not only we bring technological change and efficiency, but we're also bringing a cost reduction as well, because what we find is that old telephony systems in venues can
Hmm.
be quite expensive, and from a centralization perspective, there's a cost reduction. That's one example. We've got a number of other examples where we focus on, network and segmentation of network and strip some risk out. So what's that mean? That means
Mm.
that a lot of hospitality groups have uh, multi venues and they want centralized reporting and their data going back to a singular database. So essentially, we connect all of those venues in a very secure way, and then that enables them to do a lot of uh, multi site reporting and holistic reporting across the group. But that does introduce a lot of security, because obviously, if you're opening up the network of all venues so they can see each other, so this data can move across venues into a centralized database, there's a lot of security concerns.
Working with so many hospitality venues, you've probably seen plenty of things that provide meaningful improvements to their operations or their efficiency or the security. What are some of the key things, key improvements that we bring to hospitality venues?
Yeah, so obviously the first one is the customer experience from an IT perspective, and one of those big ones, as an example, across many areas, but one of the big ones is guest Wi-Fi.
Mm.
So, of course, most venues, hospitality, have got guest Wi-Fi, but ensuring that need for data is both given to the venue and to the guests in a meaningful way, and making sure that it's a good experience is really, really important. So there's a number of things we do with that to make sure that guests don't overload the network, but they get the bandwidth required, because it is important. A lot of families are going to venues and what have you, and devices, and they want connectivity, particularly around the big events now. If there's, UFC and Origin and all these things that have a lot of people in venue. So we manage that and we make sure that the guest experience is right, but also the venue can operate so that payments can go through seamlessly and what have you. So that's really, really important. And of course, we then overlay and look at that from a marketing perspective. What data can the venues and the groups take from that, to get authorized email addresses and connection to Facebook
Yeah,
and what
right.
have you, to be able to link those guests with the venue a little bit closer. So there's a lot of work being done around that as well. So,
Mm.
and then of course there's the overlay of security, is making sure that the people that are connecting to a guest Wi-Fi can't then all of a sudden access the POS network. And would you believe that that is something that we see very common when new
Yeah.
groups come to us? And from a layman's perspective, if you've got someone that is coming into a venue to connect to Wi-Fi and they want to cause some damage, they probably can by virtue of connecting to yes Wi-Fi and then seeing other things on the network. So we make sure all that's segmented and looked after and taken care of. So that's just one area of a number of things that we do from a guest experience perspective to make sure that these venues offer the best experience.
Another big area that we work with hospitality venues is around telephony and taking phone calls and centralizing all of that. Do you want to talk through some of the solutions that we're providing and some of the solutions that we're working on currently as well?
Yeah, so we've got a lot of experience in dealing with the way calls are handled to venues and then also to head office with these multi-site groups. So generally what we find is a lot of the time that new groups come to us and they have a number of venues and they all have their own telephony requirements. They've had a system installed some time ago.
Mm.
Lots of venues are different. So we do a full analysis on what suppliers they're with. Often they're with different suppliers. Sometimes they're with one supplier. And then we look at centralizing all that and putting all the telephony into the cloud. So nothing, whilst the calls can be taken in venue, the smarts sit in the cloud. And what does that allow? That allows to have, for example, 10 sites or unlimited number of sites to have their own telephone number for guests to call in on. But we can then route those calls to, for example, a centralized reservations team during the day, so that a team of people can take reservations for that evening and book them in. And then if that team finishes, we can then route the calls back to the venue. So it's smart routing. Then we can start to overlay all sorts of interesting things across that. We can put AI into answering some calls outside of hours or in hours to handle,
Mm.
reservations and general questions. We can then also do some, quite a bit of reporting to see what calls are being missed and when, because that's really important to people. And then further to that is, some sentiment analysis is the people that are calling, are they being handled and dealt with in a really proactive way? And are they, or, if they're calling in for a reservation, is that being handled appropriately, etc. So that's all through AI and we can report on that. It doesn't require people to be sitting there listening to calls and seeing that being
Mm.
answered properly, etc. So that's again, and then most of the time for, I would say 9 out of 10 groups, it's a cost reduction exercise as well, because a lot of these telephony systems were put in a long time ago. They're costing quite a bit of bit of money because they're with the big incumbent providers, and we can come in and then not only provide a lot of efficiency, but also a lot of cost efficiency as well.
Cost efficiency is a good thing to talk about. Working with multi venues, and a lot of the nature of working with multi venues is that they're acquiring smaller venues and bringing them into the fold without potentially fully integrating them from a technology point of view. What are the key quick wins that you're often seeing with hospitality venues that they should be looking at with technology?
Yeah, so I mean, generally across the board, when we it really comes back to our proven process and what we take all of our clients through as a group and as individuals. So if you look at into their group, we have a very solid, proven process and project plan to bring those venues in to that organisation, so that everything's standardised from day one of takeover a venue. That venue, from a technology standpoint, is operating on day one. They have their own domain, their Wi-Fi is set up like every other venues, their telephony is set up like every other venue, and then we bring that cost down. Generally, if a venue is purchased from a smaller operator, what have you, we're generally reducing quite a bit of that cost from day
Mm,
one and
mm,
bringing a lot of efficiency, because we can just put things in place and we've got the proven process to be able to do that from day one through a lot of preparation.
mm,
So that's a really big one for us. And because we know the industry, we know what's required and what's important, we can front load a lot of those things prior to them taking over on settlement day. And then that ensures that they've got the systems and the operation to be able to take it on from day one. And then there's some things after that that we really look at, a lot of infrastructure changes that, you know, for example, we often walk into a venue and their Wi-Fi from the previous provider or the previous electrician or what have you is just not up to scratch. So we do a full analysis of making sure that, beer gardens and gaming rooms and everywhere's got a consistent Wi-Fi experience. So there are a number of issues. We make sure that everything's documented very well, so that if you have a vendor that is, from gaming or CCTV or one of the critical technology vendors, if there's an issue, we can handle those things. We've got it all documented, and we minimize issues much more, and we provide solutions much quicker.
We've made a conscious decision to specialize with a few industries, and hospitality is probably one of our leading ones out of those few that we work with. What sets hospitality aside from other businesses in terms of what their requirements are from a technology point of view? What are the important things for them?
Well, the first thing to point out with technology and the hospitality groups is that they operate very differently from a standard industry. If you take a standard business where everyone has, a licensed Microsoft 365 account, they have, a standardized account, um, and they access their systems, with an individual computer that's
Mm,
allocated to them, that just doesn't work in a venue in
yeah.
hospitality. You've got multiple chefs, multiple venue managers, duty managers, etc., accessing multiple, singular devices.
Mm,
That's one big change and difference. So we've got a unique ability to handle that at a reduced cost, so that the proliferation of all these licenses and things, we've got a
mm,
subscription for everything these days. And so we try and look at that and minimize costs whilst giving them the technology and the access to the technology that they need in venue, so that we just know those things inherently. And that's very different to any other business that, that we deal with outside of the sector. And then, of course, again, I come back to just the amount of other providers and vendors that are required to operate in venue. And that is very different to most businesses. So,
mm,
making sure that all those are harmoniously talking to each other, so that your POS is online with a very high uptime. If you can't access your POS network and your POS machines and payments,
Mm, mm.
you can't operate, you can't take funds. So that's very different to a business that can probably suffer a fair bit of outage.
Few hours, yeah.
They can suffer internet connection down for a few hours here and there.
Mm,
Hospitality just can't do that. If the internet or the network goes down and they
mm,
can't sell drinks and food, they just stop. So obviously, we know that. That's why we pour a lot of time and effort into monitoring. So
mm,
generally,
mm,
a venue will know. We will know whether something is gone skew if there's a power issue or something technical has happened in the venue before they do. And we're often more often than not ringing the venue saying FYI is happening. Can you see if there's a power issue or what have you, or we're going to dispatch someone to the site to
mm.
resolve or replace the equipment. So they're just very different industries. And again, through experience, we can service them so much better.
Yeah. And it's a really good point about that with those outages and how critical it is to those businesses of us having those extended hours that we work as well. So we understand these businesses aren't 9 to 5 and they're not like every other business as well. And that's one of the things that we do particularly well and cater for is that the times you're busiest are the times that most people are, resting or staying at home or sleeping from a typical IT support standard. So
That's
we always
100%
have someone
correct. And
available.
that's right. And that's not only just about the reactive items, Nathan, in terms of outages and things. Yes, they're important. We'll often find because of our operating hours, we've got chefs in venue and duty managers and what have you doing administrative
Mm,
items that are well outside standard business hours. They're onboarding new staff, they're
mm,
offboarding staff, they've got technical requirements to connect systems and what have you. These people can't, if they're doing that on a Saturday night, during the wind down period of a venue, which is very common, you
mm.
don't want to be waiting around till Monday morning at 9 a.m. to get a response.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's important to these people to that they get 7 day a week response and action, not only on the reactive, but on the proactive things that they're doing, as
Mm.
mentioned.
Is there a specific success story over the last few years that you look back at and you're particularly proud or think it really exemplifies what we do for hospitality?
Look, we've had a number of successes with groups, hospitality groups that, everywhere from 3 venues to very large organisations. But one that stands out is a recent group that have come to us. They've had 3 or 4 venues, disparate systems, another provider that was not probably hugely experienced in the industry.
Mm, mm,
And what that determined is there was, and there's cost issues in the industry to bring costs down, but the way that cost was looked at was done not in the right way
mm,
because of the uniqueness of the industry. So we came in, we've got a very solid proven process. It's taken us 20 years to develop that we take clients through and we take them through regularly. And to take, for example, our onboarding process, it's hundreds and hundreds of tasks and phases to bring an organisation up to the standards that we deem is a gold standard. And this particular group, they come to us, nothing talking to anything. The venues were not being able to report from holistic group venues. So across all the venues, Wi-Fi was an issue in a number of them, even from, office perspective where their main head office was, cost, telephony in terms of all their telephony systems. So all the big things that we do, security, they had a breach,
mm,
it's a relatively significant breach on their bookings. They've got some accommodation at one of the venues and they had a breach on that. So that was probably the trigger point for them to come across to us, and we looked at that and determined that that breach was still ongoing. Little did they know, they thought they had covered that off. So again, through methodical process, we were able to take them through. So we did all those things that were, you know, the behind the scenes, the nitty gritty, the boring stuff. But what was the biggest experience change for them was just the speed and the operation across 7 days and being able to answer things within minutes, not hours and days,
mm,
which they were
mm,
blown away with. And, we're looking at all this very advanced technology with AI and all of that is important. But for this group, getting the basics right was just such a big
mm,
thing. And the outcome of that, Nathan, was basically duty managers or venue managers within venue just having lost complete trust in the
mm.
process of IT. not wanting to contact IT at all and trying to then work it out themselves, which led to, often more cases than not, worse outcomes because
Yeah, yeah.
of the obvious, to people wanting to contact IT and, our organisation and our people. And that's born off of the fact that we're pretty big on relationships. And, a lot of the people that look after our hospitality venues know these people really well.
Mm,
They get along with each other. So that's been a really big change for them. And it's been really nice to see that final outcome after 6 or 9 months of getting the basics right to then see that they're wanting to contact IT and be proactive about it. And we've received, uh, a lot of good feedback from that client. We say that across a number of clients, big and small.
yeah. On that, I think one of the things that sets us apart there, you mentioned it is about the relationships that we have already have with some of these hospitality groups, as well as that a lot of the people that we actually employ come from a hospitality background before technology. Do you want to talk about that and why that's important for us?
Well, it is important because the people that we employ have got, first and foremost, we employ people that have got a passion for IT. So they've got to have that passion. But a lot of these people that have had a passion for IT have worked in hospitality, which we love. So they've got a very intimate understanding of, what's important to a venue at the times that are important, just that basic stuff. But what we often see is our, our sector, the managed services sector, is just service providers not having a proper understanding of what is important to a
Mm,
client, and that's not just hospitality; that's all sectors, but particularly important to hospitality. As I mentioned, time of the day when they're busy and what's required, immediacy. These are all really important things, and having our business filled with people that have come from a hospitality background, super important. So we really look at that. Not all of our team have come from hospitality background because we do like to take on people that have got the right technical skills for the things that we need to do. But a lot of the people that come to us with a history of hospitality, and it's really important the way we service our clients.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's really important for your technical staff to be able to provide a good service and understand the experience and put themselves in other people's shoes, and that's something that gets talked about a lot. Literally being able to understand and having been in those situations, I think adds an extra edge for us with that industry in particular.